What's up, guys and gals? It's time for the latest piece of One Piece, chapter 1165, entitled Echo, Echo, Echo. And right into the chapter. But before we get underway, let's take a look at the cover art request. And it's when Oda does these, they're usually very goofy or very peaceful ones, right? When it's not an actual cover serial, it's usually not exactly filled with the death and destruction like what's currently going on in the rest of the chapter down below. But this one's quite nice. And a fan favorite law is that just taking a nap on Beppo. Beppo's taking a nap on Zeus. There's a rainbow and puppies and birds are chirping and everything's all good. Completely unlike, as I said, what's going down below in God Valley. So we have Rox, Roger, and Garp all in clashing, and stuff like this. Now, Toei Animation is going to go nuts with this. Oda knows it, we know it, so he doesn't need to spend chapters upon chapters. For one thing, Oda's fights, generally speaking, have always been relatively short. Oda doesn't spend time like a fighting manga. He doesn't spend an enormous amount of chapters and pages on the actual fights. Very rarely does he do this, and generally only solely for the Luffy fights in the bigger arcs. So I'm getting everything that I wanted out of this chapter. I think this chapter is amazing. Just going to state that right now. And also bring up something because the prevailing theory, I brought it up, Teki brought it up, everybody brought it up, is that at the end of the last chapter, Rox speaking to while in Domi Reversi and speaking to Garp and Roger and them actually hearing it. Some people are saying it's a hockey thing. Most people have concluded this is likely a voice of all things thing instead, right? It's the voice of all things. Rox, while not confirmed to have it, likely does. Same with Garp, right? They're such prominent characters. It's like when I said for years, Garp obviously has Conqueror's Hockey and everybody called me crazy for a decade. It was obvious to me when what's obvious to some obviously is not obvious to people with the agendas. Speaking of which, before we get underway, I actually saw people at the end of chapter 1164 when we thought this was the voice of all things. That's how Roger and Garp are able to hear it. Because Garp didn't actually respond, there were the Garp slanderers who actually stated and believed, I have to believe they were trolling or something, that it couldn't be the voice of all things, or if it is, because Garp can't have the voice of all things, and even if it is, Garp doesn't actually acknowledge it, so he's probably in that last panel like, I don't know what's going on. Rox is trying to talk to him, but Garp has such an L on his forehead that he couldn't actually hear him. Only Roger can. I legitimately saw that brought up. Either way, the beginning of this chapter obviously destroys that. Because once again, Garp is awesome. We are pro Garp here on this channel. And he's once again reiterating. Rox is just like, please, the rest of me and stuff like that. Now, Garp, of course, immediately, you hear that too, Roger? And Roger's like, yeah. And so Rox is still in the Domi Reversi, but he's still conscious of what's going on. He can obviously see it and stuff like that. So the Conqueror's Hockey is revving up. We get the clashes. We get Roger with Ace going, his words, his attitude, his expression. They're all telling us different stories. Boom. And we get, obviously everything has magnified. Rox has grown his, Domi Reversi wings sort of idea. But the good thing is that while the Conqueror's Hockey clash is going on between Roger and Rox, Garp manages to get a Conqueror's Hockey fist right on his nose, breaking Rox's nose, we can only assume, with a blow like that. And slam, slam, boom, both of them are still blown back while Conquered Hockeyed up. This is Roger and Garp. And once again, Rox is... I'm going to go out on a limb once again and say that there is a power boost. How significant can be argued wherever you want, like DBZ power levels. Been argued for 40 years and no one has a consensus. But Rox here with the Domi Reversi is obviously has been given, and I'm holding to this, some type of boost. Like, not just in his physical size, but in his strength, his hockey, everything is dialed up to 11. Rox is, of course, an amazing character with great power on his own, but the Domi Reversi obviously sort of went tick 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 a little bit up on that volume dial, right? And he blows back, even with those 2 hits, he blows back Garp and Roger, and they go slamming into the mountainside sort of idea, and it's just absolutely insane. We see, the skies have started to split, like the heavens splitting, just like we've known about before when great hockey clashes. That's what happens. We've seen the sky split a couple times in the series, and of course, this is the guys. These are the original, the OGs, you know what I mean? So, if anybody's going to create make a strike through the heavens, it's going to be in this fight. So, it's been struck in half and stuff. We see the reactions from a lot of people. We get Silverax saying that they're going to steal a ship and get off the island. Now, that's where there was a translation difference. Silverax said, let's find and steal a ship and get out of here. In the latest translation, the one I'm reading right now, not the one I read before, obviously, says, let's steal the ship and get off the island. That's where one of the crew in the back says, you mean Rox's ship? And Silverax responds like, you really think he's coming back? You like to get on the ship and stuff like that? It's like, no, the Rox pirates are over. Shiki's laughing about it, though. He's like, this is the end of the era, the end of the Rox pirates. And he's just going off. So everyone's trying to get out of Dodge. We get sort of a parallel response thing. Roger's crew and the Marines on Garp's ship both saying like, listen, you got to get back here. We got to get out of here. What's happening, Roger? What's happening, Garp? Sort of idea. And they both respond with saying, get everybody off the island, make sail and stuff like that. I will be back. They're both on Den Den Mushis being parallels of each other. And it's really cool. And then they do the classic thing that has been done in Shonen since the dawn of time. The great thing where characters, either like in Goku's sense, it's usually his gi gets all ripped up and he rips it off, sort of idea, right? Like he rips off the tattered blue shirt, but in most series, if they're wearing an overcoat or something like that, they either roll up the sleeves, they take their really sexy cape or their cloak off or something like that, and it's all a big reveal, and boom, I'm here to throw down. Roger and Garp both doing the same thing simultaneously. It looks awesome. It's everything you want these two to do, and it's just like, so Garp ends up like they're facing him down and they're like, Roger, I came here intending to arrest the two of you both, and that's when Roger responds, yeah, and my plan was to steal Shocky and the treasure along with it and get the hell out of here, and they're just both like, well, and Roger says, instead, shall we team up for a minute, Garp? And seeing Rox just like demonized and and sort of idea, Garp's like, I don't like the idea. I'm gonna be straight with you, Roger, but I can't afford to let him run free, not when he's like this. So they obviously know. They both are aware that Rox, especially with the voice of all things in their head and stuff like that, Rox is not himself. Something happened to Rox. And Garp is the first one to say it. He's the first one to acknowledge, because Garp doesn't want to actually, he doesn't want to fight them like this under these circumstances. You know what I mean? So, for all of the Garp slander that's out there and stuff, and maybe he's just, I'm big macho brain and I just want to fight the strongest guys, which once again, we praise multiple characters in all types of series for the same attitude, but obviously we got to go on the agenda with that. Garp is a real one. It's not Roger who brings it up. It's Garp who basically says, hey, Rox, as he's dodging and as they're fighting, he says, look, this curse, what's happened to you, is there any way we can break it? And he tosses them into the mountainside and stuff like that, because obviously they believe they're hearing Rox's voice in their heads. So they assume that he can wake up, as Roger tries to say, as he comes down with Conqueror's Hockey, and it's just like, Rox, wake up! Boom! And they're going all out. Obviously, they can't afford to not go all out against a guy like Rox, especially when he's been Domi reversied and he's blowing shit up and blah, 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 right? So, I really like this because I like the fact that both of them realize this Rox is under an influence of something. It's some type of curse. It's some type of spell. And they're like, hey, if you've got any information, how do we, do we hit you on the funny bone? What exactly do we need to do to get you out of this form and back to your normal self, sort of idea, right? Because Garp, for all intents and purposes, once again, does not actually want to straight up murder people. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to capture, and defeat the pirates. He doesn't actually want to, R.I.P. the pirates, especially under these circumstances. Like, Rox is being controlled. They both know this. Rayleigh and Scopper are both still rushing towards the ship with the treasure and stuff like that. Obviously, Rayleigh still got the best treasure right there in his arms. But he's just like, Roger's going to keep fighting until we've evacuated the entire island. So, this hockey is going nuts. Gloriosa goes up to Scopper and be like, hey, can I tag along with you guys? And it's like, all right, that makes a lot of sense that Gloriosa, because everybody's going their own way. We know that Silver Axe is obviously Shiki's like, ha ha ha, I have the float fruit, so I'm all good. We don't know where Shiki's going. Silver Axe is the one, obviously, who's intending on stealing Rox's ship. Now we know where Gloriosa went. Then we run over to Kaido and Big Mom. And it's the same clash that we heard about before, about this lifelong debt. In Big Mom's mind, she's like, that devil fruit wasn't for you. You stole it from me, so now you owe me one. Because now you have the power, an amazing power, devil fruit of being a dragon and stuff. So you owe me, Kaido, and I will one day come collect, right? And Kaido's just like, well, I'll be waiting for you to crush you the next chance that happens. It's finders keepers. I'm going to form my own new crew, and it's just going to be violence and brutality is what completely, dominates all sort of idea, right? So, obviously, and we already knew this, the loyalty level of the Rox crew was not there. And with Rox under the influence, the entire crew structure immediately fell apart. Kaido doesn't seem to be at worse for wear, that he just lost his quote-unquote fatherly older brother figure in the form of Whitebeard and or Rox. He's just like, oh, well, Rox hit me, so I guess things are over. And I don't think Big Mom and Kaido, unlike Rox and unlike Garp and Roger and probably Whitebeard, I don't think they realize that Rox is under some influence, under a curse, under Domi Reversi. They're just like, okay, he's going power hungry, he's going nuts, he's betraying us, that's what pirates do. So, it is what it is. So they're all going their separate ways. We jump back to Rox kicking the crap out of Garp and Roger again. Once again, the size is one thing, but I don't think it's a far cry to say that the Domi Reversi, not that Rox could not go toe-to-toe with Roger, Whitebeard, or Garp. They're all right here. They're the strongest characters in One Piece. But I think that this Domi Reversi didn't just increase his size. It gives him a power boost. It gives him an edge. That's why he's able to 2v1 against Roger and Garp. I don't think normally, I think Rox would have a much harder time trying to take on these two 2v1. That's just my opinion. It's not about an agenda for Garp or Roger or anything like that, or trying to downplay Rox at all. It's just that Rox's strength here is obviously just unlike his usual self, That being said, we also do see Whitebeard. I was wondering where he ended up, because remember, last time we saw him, he did a big hockey clash with Rox, didn't seemingly get blown away or anything like that, but then Whitebeard was missing when Roger and Garp were doing their thing, and I said, there's no way Whitebeard it just got comatose from that one hockey clash. There's no way, no way. For some reason, maybe he got blown back a bit or something, because Whitebeard seems nonchalant, totally fine, just standing somewhere on the island, like nowhere near the fight going down with Roger and Garp and Rox, and doesn't seem to be interested in including himself in the fight. He's almost like, well, I guess, he probably suspects that Rox is not being himself, but he's just like, whatever. I guess the crew has fallen apart, and it's time for me to cut my losses, sort of idea. Whitebeard is being extraordinarily pragmatic and practical right now. I was kind of hoping that maybe Whitebeard was sort of like, I don't know. I was hoping for him to still be included in the fight in some way, but then circumstances took him away from the fight. I don't know. I maybe just Oda was like, okay, I don't have a good reason as to why Whitebeard is obviously on their level, but I can't have Rox be so overpowered that he's tanking a 3v1 with these guys. There's just no way. So I've got to take Whitebeard out of the fight. I don't have a good reason to take him out of the fight, so they just showcase him after the clash. It's ambiguous, and then we just see him totally fine, chilling, trying to get off the island in some way. That's when, obviously, Marco's dad shows up. Marco's dad named Polo. Yeah, okay. Oda hit that right on the nose. I think the whole fan base has been saying that Marco's dad would have to be Polo, the whole time. So this is a long-running gag that just Oda probably knew he had to do, and it came true. So we see, obviously, the Polo Pirates. Polo Grom is captain, Marco's dad. And this is where, he mentions, he sees Whitebeard saying, hey, you're the one who actually knocked half that mountain down, aren't you, Whitebeard? And Whitebeard's like, yeah, whatever. Obviously it was Whitebeard. And he goes, well, it looks like your crew's falling apart. So obviously Whitebeard is aware that there's just chaos with Rock's not in his right mind and stuff like that. Whitebeard's just like, well, it's not my job to try to, bring them all together and stuff like that. We know how Whitebeard is. Once again, these characters aren't meant to be perfect and the hero in every instance. Remember that they are pirates with their own three-dimensional personalities and characters. They're not meant to exactly be, when you go through an RPG and always choose the light side and the charity and all that stuff. Like, once in a while, there's a gray situation where you're like, I'm going with this one. I'm going to be a little selfish. I'm going to take the payment rather than give it. You know what I mean? Anybody who's played RPGs knows this. And, these characters, of course, are not in that regard. They're their own characters, and they have their own wants and desires. And to Whitebeard's knowledge, the crew is not a family. And we know that Whitebeard, that's all he wants is a family. So, in this regard, he's like, what does he gain from trying to gather the Rock's crew or the remaining members together and stuff like that? Because the familiarity, the family ties do not exist in this crew. So Whitebeard's not really that interested. He holds no love or attachment to the Rock's crew, whether it stays or goes. But this is where Marco's dad here, Polo's just like, hey, I'm a big fan of yours and stuff like that. Say, you got no ship to get back, right? How about you team up with me and stuff like this? And Whitebeard's just like, get out of my hair, man. Sort of idea. Now, obviously, they are going to team up. Whitebeard doesn't have a ship to go back to. Polo's obviously got a ship, so he's going to end up on the ship. We know that likely Marco's dad is going to die at some point, probably shortly here after the God Valley incident, because we saw young, teenage Marco as an apprentice, part of Whitebeard's crew, by the time they reach Wano. So, yeah, so in another, what's that, another 8 years from now or something like that? So, either way, he's just like, so we're seeing how every member, main character is sort of getting their own route or, their own direction, getting off the island, etc. We're seeing how everyone's, Stussy's asking where did Newgate go? And it's like, well, I don't know. What are we doing and stuff like that? Now, Dragon being a real one here. Dragon is pointing his gun at his superior officer or the CP6 guy or something and just basically says, no, you people, we are Marines. Our job is to help the citizens and the people and stuff like that. We are going back. We are going to put those people on the shoreline. We are going to put them on our ship. We are going to rescue them. And if anyone argues, I will personally shoot you. And it's like, all right, and stuff. And they're just like, this isn't going to end well for you, Dragon. And he goes, I don't give a fuck. I'm like, all right. Dragon being a real one here. Dragon seeing the corruption firsthand, trying to follow in his old man's footsteps, and obviously seeing some of the worst side of the government and the Marines well before he was already established and stuff like that. So it's like, all right, here we go. Now this is interesting. This is interesting, and I wonder how they're going to be involved. Rayleigh and Scopper actually drop off Shockey the treasure of the rest of the crew, and they run back. They're like, don't you dare follow us. Take the ship and get out to open water into the shores and wait. But Scopper and Rayleigh are headed forward to see what they can do. They're like, we're not leaving our captain behind. We're going to boom, boom, boom. They're doing the Zoro Sanji thing. It's like, all right, we're the monster trio here. We're going to go give our captain a hand. So, incredibly interesting, and I was hoping to sort of see them maybe not partake necessarily in the clash if Whitebeard's not going to be part of it. Having Rayleigh or Scopper, like I would have been fine if we had seen them all sort of team up, and it's only said that he teamed up with Roger and Garp, sort of idea like Sengoku said it, but there were other background characters that assisted or helped or whatever. But if we're not going to include Whitebeard and stuff like that, having Rayleigh and Scopper be included would have been cool. Obviously, they're going to show up at the end, not at the beginning, sort of idea, right? Or a little too late to help with the battle. This is where we see Saint Saturn and stuff. That island will never have existed, understood, and it's obviously with the eyes and stuff. It's Emu still controlling Saturn, sort of idea. It's just like, this island is officially gone off the maps and stuff like that. And we get the narrator to come on saying, the God Valley incident was an S-tier top secret classification. Records of these operations and special hazard pay for Naval Base G11 and Cipher Pole number 6. Registry of all the participants in the human hunt were expunged. The site of the event was God Valley. Location, area, population, and everything else known to the island were erased. The same with the number of fatalities were unknown on this day. So, narrator's coming on to just say, this is insane. What happened to Garling, by the way? Garling got foddered. He got fodderized. He was no match for anything. Once again, I've been saying this. Like Garling, some people have said, oh, he's going to fight up against, there's been theories about Whitebeard fighting him at the end while Garp and Roger fought against rocks and stuff like that, that Garling would be like, ha ha ha, you think this is over? You think I would flee? I will take down all of you scuzz pirates and stuff like that. And he was going to get wrecked by Whitebeard, right? Obviously, that can still happen, I guess, but kind of unlikely to happen. I think Garling just got absolutely dog-walked like he should, and the only reason he's still alive is his bullshit regen hacks, which I do not consider a feat. If you need regen, you're not top tier. Sorry. So yeah, this is where the end part of the chapter comes into play. Some people have been complaining about this. I'm not, because this is literally 101 for every shonen power system virtually ever. It's where they're kind of getting their ass beat. They're doing damage, but it's not lasting. Like, it's not sticking, sort of idea. So Roger brings up to Garp and he says, Garp, did you know about that enormous black monster that the government has, speaking of Emu stuff, and they call themselves the good guys? And he says, yeah, well, I did not know, because I can't believe it either. Roger offers him and said, hey, if you quit the Navy, you should come join up with us and stuff. Once again, both Rox and Roger both acknowledging that Garp's a real one. He'd make a better pirate than a Marine. He should definitely join somebody's crew. And Garp just remarks, don't be an idiot. If I quit, who's going to watch out for, for the Marines? And stuff like that. Now, this is the thing. People don't like this. I understand why. But Garp is still a flawed character. His job, in his mind, is to be there for things like this. If Garp wasn't here on the Marine side, and once again, the amount of piracy, Rox, not so much, but Roger might be a bit of a real one, but they're still pirates, Anarchy cannot, be the answer and stuff like that. So Garp's still trying to be the good cop. He's still trying to be the policeman, Just because, at the end of the day, the pirates are the criminals. The world government is corrupt, but I don't know a single government in the real world we live in that is not corrupt. That doesn't do shady shit. So, fact of the matter is, this is more fantastical and shonen-sized version of it, but Garp is just trying to make the best of a bad situation, but becoming a pirate is not the answer to him. Somebody, because the Marines still stand for good things, Just because you have an asshole at the top doesn't mean that all that the military or the police forces and stuff are not doing their job and doing a good job trying to clean up the world or the islands or the country or what have you. So in this regard, Garp is still being a real one here because he's sticking to his values. He's like, pirates are bad and are criminals, and my job as a Marine is to make the normal citizens safe. To him, it's not a war between Marines and pirates. It's about It's about keeping the peace. It's about keeping the islands in the east, the west, the North Blue, keeping them safe from piracy. That's his job, and he's sticking to his morals. So, I mean, once again, some people call it stubborn. I call it conviction, you know. This is where the thing that pisses people off is the condensation of mass. Roger brings it up at, like, after that being rejected that Garp's going to join his crew, says, it all comes down to mass, doesn't it, Garp? And Garp's like, what do you mean by mass? He says, first of all, the color of armament in hockey is a power that doesn't yield to the devil fruits. And on top of that, I've been using Conqueror's hockey. There's no way that we couldn't have been hurting him. And Garp's just like, yeah, but he was guarding against our Conquerors with his own Conquerors, so they're sort of canceling each other out. And Roger says, that's exactly my point. He says, there's no lasting damage to him unless we surpass that. So we've got to go beyond his Conquerors. So it all comes down to who wears out who first will lose. There's no way to keep him up in this monstrous form. So once again, going on my theory that the Domi Reversi doesn't just increase size, but stamina, endurance, hockey, strength, what have you, right? Because they're both getting tired, and Rox is seemingly not taking very much to any damage because they're canceling out their hockey. So this is where Garp brings up, so you want to hit him with, like, a critical hit. You want to do a critical mass of supreme, Conqueror's hockey. And he's just like, yeah, I don't even think about whether we'd have enough stamina left for that, but it's all we've got to do because we're going to lose a war of attrition here. So this is what we have to do. Now, this has been done in many power systems and many shonen sort of idea. The idea is to condense your power. It was done in Shaman King where they're creating these big, giant oversouls, and it was like, no, condense all that power into a single smaller size, and you'll be able to unleash it far more deadly because you're spreading it out too much. But if you condense the power, it's going to be that much more, not accurate, just like keen or critical hitting, as they say, you know. It was done in, as I said, Shaman King, Seven Deadly Sins, Bleach. It's been done in many series that have, in Dragon Ball, where you're just condensing the power into a smaller form, having the same amount of power, but condensing it down makes it that much more deadly because it's going to hit home a lot harder rather than this grand, attack that has much more flaw in it because you're spreading it out. Like, as Bilbo said in Lord of the Rings, butter scraped over too much bread, right? So the idea is, and people for some reason aren't liking this idea, but it's sort of like, okay, no, they're like, all right, focus it all just right here at the point of my knuckles. Focus all my hockey. And this has already been sort of established with Zoro with the Enma. Enma was dragging out way too much hockey into its blade all at once from Zoro. That's why Zoro's arms shriveled up and stuff like that, right? It's how he was able to utilize and unlock Conqueror's hockey without knowing actually how to use it because he just unlocked the key for Enma and said, fine, Enma, you can take all my hockey. Now, Enma knows how to take the Conqueror's hockey out of Zoro. Zoro doesn't need to be aware that he's got it for him to be, yeah, I see your Conqueror's hockey pool. I'm taking that too. I'm going to drain it all. Enma is aware it can take it all. So he's taking all of the hockey pool. And so we've already seen this, is that condensing all that power into a single blade, right? Enma was doing this to Zoro multiple times in Wano. First when he first got it, and then of course in this fight against King. Now here, we're seeing that Garp and Roger are just coming to the same conclusion that, alright, we're instead of coating up our whole hand and stuff like that, like we need to find a fixed point. And we need to, for Roger, it's probably like the tip of his sword, the tip of his blade, just that 1, inch. And for Garp, it's probably like right here on the 2 knuckles sort of idea. It's like he's vulcanized up, but he's like, all right, I got to get it right there. And so they both charge themselves up and says, we got to pull this off. All 3 of us will be down for the count, even if we do pull it off. But if we miss, we're going to be done for. And then there's Rox there, still crying his eyes out, and you feel bad for him, you know what I mean? He's like his sorrow. And that's where both Garp and Roger, I'm not sure which one says this. It appears to be Garp, who says, listen up, Rox. I don't know what I can say to console you. I don't know what happened to you either. But there's one thing I do recognize. I recognize your sorrow. I recognize you're in pain sort of idea. I believe it's Garp is the one saying this. Because once again, Garp is a real one. He wants to stop Rox and Roger piracy. He doesn't want, he wants to capture them. He wants to defeat them in battle. he doesn't want to win like this. He doesn't like how this is going down. This is, I have to do this, not I want to do this. And Roger, I think it has to be Garp, because Roger's the one who's actually tearing up and stuff because Rox is crying, and he's just like, don't cry, you idiot, and stuff. So Roger's obviously much more emotional about this. He's tearing up, and then they both use brand new moves. I love the names of these moves, by the way. God of Fire, or Kagatsuchi, I believe is how it's said, the God of Fire in Shintoism. God of Fire Ace, and Infinite, I do not know how to say this, Infinium? Because it's infinity, but it's infintum, I think. Anyways, I'm very bad at saying that word. I always get tongue-tied with that one. But it's basically Infinity Explosion, right? Infinite Explosion. And I love these two attacks. They seem so badass, but they both charge up. Obviously, Rogers conquers, manages to get through Rox, and he's slicing up all one side of him, while Garp's fists are going through the other side of Rox. Rox is not coming back from this, man. Like, they've desecrated his body and stuff like that. And it ends out with saying that the world government attempted to cover up everything that had happened here. But the downfall of Rox D. Zebek and his lawless band of followers, the Rox Pirates, who wreaked havoc in their era, cast an unmistakable reverberations that shook the very world. And we just see that from the ashes of God Valley, we have a faraway shot on the sea, and we just see the black lightning of all this Conquerors hockey. This double attack from Roger and Garp, pretty much their prime. You know, they might get a little bit stronger after this, but this is pretty much, if they're not in their absolute prime, they're at 95% of it. You know, they're as close as they're ever going to be, you know, to us seeing them in full-on action in their prime. And two new attacks that look so awesome. Naming one God of Fire Ace. That's nice there, you know, and saying like it's infinite explosion sort of idea from Garp. It's just amazing, you know. 1165 is just a really good chapter. It's action-packed, it's amazing, it's everything I sort of wanted, and we know that Toei is going to spend the time to animate the fight going a lot harder, a lot more crazy shit. You know, we're going to get more, like, clashes and fighting scenes of it, where in this chapter we've been jumping back and forth, you know, but we already sort of knew. I think we got a lot more out of this than I expected to. So many people were worried that Oda was going to basically skip a lot of these things, a lot of these clashes, a lot of these fights and stuff like that, but we're basically seeing the majority of it. You know, we're seeing exactly how it all went down, how it ended up being with all these characters on the island, how it ended up being Roger and Garp versus Rox. And right here, this is pretty much going to be the end of the flashback, I'm going to say. At least the part about God Valley. It wouldn't surprise me if we jump back to the actual flashback, which is Harald. I'm hoping 1166, though, does show us the aftermath with Garp and Roger parting, Rox, you know, obviously body there on the ground sort of idea. I hope there's a little bit to that, but it wouldn't surprise me where the narrator came on and stuff like that, saying the government tried to erase all this and this was the end of the Rox crew and stuff like that. That we're not going to know the exact aftermath details. We're not going to know, you know, what happened with Shockey and Rayleigh, like when they got back to the island, when they got back to the ship, like did Shockey stay on the crew for a while, stuff like that. What happened, like did she immediately like say I want to be dropped off here or what have you, and like we just don't know. There are so many factors that we're not aware of. So 1165 was an amazing chapter. Where 1166 is going to start us off at, a lot of speculation there. As I said, I'd love to see the aftermath of this fight of the death of Rox, but at the same time, I have a feeling that Oda might just immediately jump to Harald and try to get us right to where Loki obviously was with the whole Domi Reversi thing and how the world government tricked Harald into, oh yes, the death of Rox and stuff. Well, now that he's been vanquished, we will gladly include you and blah blah blah. Hence the Domi Reversi, the satanic symbol, you know, in the throne room and everything that the Jarl and Loki witnessed and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure we're going to get to that fairly soon. So, but what did you guys think of the chapter? What did you think of the review? And of course, what do you think is going to happen in chapter 1166? Because I'm definitely looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. We'll see all you beautiful people back here once again next time for the next piece of One Piece. Looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too. Sayonara.